Hello there, everyone. If you're watching this video, then you are part of the TTOR army, an army that is building itself up one subscriber at a time. As you can see from the title and thumbnail of today's video, today we're going to be talking about Andrew Torba, the CEO of Gab. More specifically, we're going to be talking about how Andrew Torba literally is talking about building Gab communes. I kid you not. This is not an exaggeration. Now, a little over a year ago, I put out a video titled Exposing the Andrew Torba Cult of Personality on Gab. And I'll have a link in the description box below with the Gab censorship playlist, and you can find this as one of the first videos in that whole series. But basically, what I exposed in this video and what I've talked about in many videos since is that there is a cult of personality around Andrew Torba that worships him, that praises him, that gives him endless flattery. They hold him up as being this great, amazing leader, religiously and otherwise, when the reality is Andrew Torba is a lying grifter and he's a heretic as far as the Bible goes. Claims to be a Bible-believing Christian, but teaches so many different heresies that I'm starting to think that maybe it's a sport for him to see how many different heresies he can teach people while convincing them that he's a good Bible-believing Christian. Anyway, that aside, I knew at some point that Andrew Torba might go beyond just being a cult of personality on the internet, and he might graduate to traditional cult where you actually have your own commune/compound, and well, in May of 2022, Andrew Torba is talking about doing exactly that. So here we have a post from Andrew Torba. On May 18th, someone named Nick Storm said, "You know there's an untapped power in Christians working together to buy as much property as possible in a town or county and using it to be productive, to grow, to build local supply chains, and to become a shining beacon to a dying world." Torba responded by saying, "I wonder if we could set up an entity under Gab to crowdfund capital for this specific purpose and then build affordable housing in the form of sustainable homesteads on the land that Gabbers could get a no-usury loan to live on and own." What's this? Communes that Gabbers get to live on? I wonder if anyone else is welcome in this area. Well, Andrew Torba, a day ago, said, "The Amish and Mennonites are going to outlast every woke church in this country, and their faith and obedience to God is orders of magnitude better than that of the typical American who calls himself a Christian. I think it's time for a neo-Amish movement, name to be decided, to emerge where we set up decentralized communities of Christians around the country who keep outsiders out just like the Amish do and stick to a set of core biblical principles. We can reject the world and its ways, but we also shouldn't be afraid to embrace the use of technology, our own technology, for the glory of God. Been thinking about this a lot lately." That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Andrew Torba is planning on setting up multiple communes around the United States of America for Gabbers to live in and basically have their own self-sustaining lifestyle. They grow their own food, they make their own clothes. Basically, they provide their own everything, and they not only rely on the outside world for nothing, but they keep outsiders out. You know, this isn't the first time such a thing has been tried before, Andrew Torba. Most cults who set up communes or compounds do so under that very premise. They do it under the premise of, well, the world is evil and we need to isolate ourselves from the world and be our own self-sustaining community where we can produce all our own stuff and we don't need the outside world for anything, and we'll keep the outside world out of our community. And that has never ended good. Never. But let's just give one example of this. In a Creation Social post from 5 months ago, Darius the Unvaxxed Time Lord showed a screenshot of an Andrew Torba post from 5 months ago where Torba said, "The market will crash, the regime government will fail, the Silicon Valley stronghold will end. When they do, we will be here with the parallel systems built by the same people who built this country, Christians." Darius said in response, "There goes Torba doing his usual blah 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 about parallel Christian society again. Basically, he wants his cheerleaders to be like the Amish, but with extra steps. Once again, never go full on Jonestown." Then, on January 18th, Andrew Torba said, "I'm not going to allow this movement to be subverted. They've done enough subverting for the past 100 years. It ends now." And Darius on Creation Social said in response to the post, "Oh goody, our good buddy Andrew Torba is whining about subversion on Gab again, and as usual, his minions come out like locusts to smite anyone who questions his logic. His inner Jim Jones is showing." Jim Jones, Jonestown? That sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Well, it should. If you go to the Encyclopedia of Britannica entry on Jonestown, what you read is that Jonestown, location of the mass murder suicide of members of the California-based People's Temple cult at the behest of their charismatic but paranoid leader Jim Jones, in Jonestown Agricultural Commune, Guyana. The death toll exceeded 900, including some 300 who were aged 17 and under, making the incident one of the largest mass deaths in American history. We're going to skip the next paragraph, and then we're going to resume. While the People's Temple was active in humanitarian causes in its communities, Jones's treatment of his followers was often less than humane. Temple members were regularly humiliated, beaten, and blackmailed, and many were coerced or brainwashed into signing over their possessions, including their homes, to the church. Black members and members of other minority groups were convinced that if they left the People's Temple, they would be rounded up into government-run concentration camps. Family members were kept apart and encouraged to inform on one another. In 1977, after members of the press began to ask questions about Jones's operation, he moved with several hundred of his followers to Jonestown, a compound that he had been building in Guyana for some 3 to 4 years. A cable from the U.S. Embassy in Guyana to the U.S. Department of State in June 1978 characterized the autonomy that Jones subsequently found in Guyana this way. During the consular visits, it has been observed that the local Guyanese administration exercises little or no control over the Jonestown community, and that the settlement's autonomy seems virtually total. This is due to a variety of reasons, which include the fact that the area in question is remote, and thus the government's rather primitive administrative machinery is already overstrained by its obligations to the Guyanese citizens living in the region, as well as an understandable disinterest on the part of the local officials to bother with an apparently self-sufficient community of non-Guyanese who are obviously not actively seeking any extensive contact with the Guyanese environment in which their settlement is located. What we have, therefore, is a community of American citizens existing as a self-contained and self-governing unit in a foreign land in which, for all intents and purposes, is furnishing to the residents of all of the community services such as civil administration, police and fire protection, education, healthcare, etc., normally provided by central government within its territory. So Jonestown was a commune, a compound, set up in the country of Guyana, and basically they were exactly what Andrew Torba is talking about. A community that is self-sustaining, self-containing, self-governing. They have their own everything. They grow their own food. They make their own clothes. They police themselves. They have their own, basically, system of government and their own control. They were isolated from the rest of the country that they were located in. Andrew Torba is talking about building the same thing, but here in America, and not just one commune, but several spread out across the country. Now, what happened to this Jonestown that Andrew Torba seems so desperate to emulate? In November 1978, U.S. Congressman Leo Ryan traveled to Guyana to inspect the People's Temple's activities and the Jonestown compound. He was investigating rumors that some members of the cult were being held against their will and that some were being subjected to physical and psychological abuse. After traveling to Guyana's capital, Georgetown, on November 14th, he arrived at Jonestown on November 17th. The following day, when Ryan was set to return home, several temple members who wanted to leave the compound boarded his delegation's truck in order to accompany him back to the United States. Other members attacked Ryan shortly before the vehicle left the compound, but he escaped unhurt, and the truck continued on with Ryan aboard. Temple members then launched an attack at the airstrip from which Ryan and his company were to depart. 5 people, including Ryan and 3 members of the press, were shot and killed, and 11 others were wounded. In the wake of the shooting, Jones released radio orders for Temple members outside the compound to commit suicide. Shortly thereafter, Jones enacted his revolutionary suicide plan at the compound, which members had practiced in the past, in which a fruit drink was laced with cyanide, tranquilizers, and sedatives. It was first squirted into the mouths of babies and children via syringe and then imbibed by adult members. Jones himself died of a gunshot wound. Fewer than 100 of the Temple guards in Guyana survived the massacre. The majority of survivors either had defected that day or were in Georgetown. Officials later discovered a cache of firearms, hundreds of passports stacked together, and $500,000 in U.S. currency. Millions more had reportedly been deposited in bank accounts overseas. The People's Temple effectively disbanded after the incident and declared bankruptcy at the end of 1978. So what happened with this compound is in November of 1978, a sitting congressman traveled to the compound, basically found all kinds of horrible things happening there. Members of the compound who didn't want to be there anymore tried to leave with this congressman and his party, but before they could leave on their airplane, they were hunted down and killed by Temple members. And then, shortly after this happened, Jones had this whole suicide thing occur, and pretty much everyone in the compound died, other than the 100 survivors it mentions. But Jonestown is not the only story of an isolated compound/commune that was self-sufficient in all manner of things. That's not the only example of such a community that ended poorly. Basically, everyone we hear about ended pretty poorly. And what Andrew Torba is talking about doing is basically making the Gab version of Jonestown. But it's going to work this time because Andrew Torba and his ilk are the ones running it. So we've talked a lot in the past year and change about Andrew Torba being a cult leader, about Andrew Torba basically being the leader of a cult of personality, but it seems just being a cult of personality leader isn't enough for Andrew Torba. In his own words, he's literally thinking about setting up communes across the country that gabbers live on, that keep outsiders out, and that for all practical purposes function exactly like Jonestown. And considering how bad Jonestown was and how it ended and how all such communities that have been tried over history, how badly they end, well, I don't see it ending well for Andrew Torba and his community of gabbers who are actually stupid and brainwashed enough to go along with him on this to the point where they'll actually go to these communes. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked what you saw and you want to help me go from being a part-time to a full-time content creator, then I would encourage you to hit the subscribe button, check out my other videos, and leave your likes and comments down below. It doesn't matter whether you're seeing me on YouTube, or Joshu TV, or YouTube, or NewTube, or BitChute, the concept applies to them all equally. And if you'd like to follow me on my various social media accounts, I would encourage you to check out my Tap My Bio profile, where I have links to all of the social media sites that I have accounts on. If you'd like to help me preserve freedom of speech on the internet, there are 2 ways you can do this. You can join and use my website Creation Social, which is an open source alt-tech alternative to Facebook and Gab. Lots of great conversations happen here. You have true freedom of speech with very minimal drama, which I think is the best of both worlds. And if you like using Facebook at all, then you should definitely use Creation Social. If you want to help me create a video sharing site of my own, I would encourage you to donate to the Quarter Project. Quarter is an open source alt-tech alternative to YouTube that I am currently working on raising funds for. It's going to be a site that is very feature rich and functional, and it will have pretty much all the features you'd ever want in a video sharing site and all of the freedom of speech that you would want as well. So you can contribute to the Quarter Project either through my GiveSendGo campaign, which you can see here on screen, or you can donate to the Quarter account on Flattr, where you can do one-time or monthly tips. And everything you do as far as Flattr donations go or GiveSendGo campaign goes will go towards the Quarter Project. And if you'd like to help fund TTOR or the Creation Social and or Quarter projects, then you can purchase products from my Teespring store, where we have TTOR merch, we have Creation Social merch, and we have Quarter merch. And you'll find the link to that in the description box below as well. You can also help fund me by buying and reading my books. There's another Inconvenient Truth, What Secular America Hates, and there's another Inconvenient Truth too, Defending Young Earth Creationism. You can find access to these books on the TTOR website. Thank you for watching, and have an excellent day.